that came just to come, and that's so nice. That's gratifying. But we need to, you have to become sensitive to the arts. They all are connected. Theater, music, dance, media, studio arts. It isn't, you have to actually work at it. You have to look at things. You have to think about it. You have to talk to other people about it. And it's a learned activity. That's why many of you are here, to learn the activity of appreciating art. But you need to also experience it. Go to the theater, go to the band and orchestra, go to the choir, because there's something there. There's something there that's kind of magical, that will enhance your spirit and enrich your soul. And wouldn't that be good? Isn't that a good idea? And as an artist, that's what you want to share. That's what you're trying to share with others. You're doing something you think is worth sharing. So that's kind of a lot of theater physics coming up. And so what is a landscape? This is another sort of, I'll get to some pictures and start rolling soon. But a landscape for me is a visual poem. And then I found a Leonardo quote that I thought was kind of fun. Painting is poetry that is seen rather than felt, and poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen. He probably didn't really say it, but I think it's kind of cool. You know, it's an interesting thought. Because of the landscape, it doesn't necessarily tell a story. It doesn't necessarily sell a product. It is for its own sake. It exists for its own sake. And so these landscapes are part of my experience, because as artists, we always know, what we experience firsthand the best. So we paint, or in my case, paint what I experience, paint what I know. When I was your age, I know, I'm obsessed with age, and I like to joke about it, but it would have been 1972 when I was your age. And what I really loved was comic books, and this is actually a picture of Captain America. And so when I entered college, I was looking for my own aesthetic philosophy. What do I want to be as an artist? What is art? Or what's so great about it? You know, I mean, I didn't know. I like movies, I like comic books, I like things, I like paintings, but, you know, I really didn't know what I was doing. I know that's a phrase I hate to hear now, but I was there too. So. Chaplain Mo said, can you get God to get that sun down a little quicker?
I'll work on it.
Please? Anyway, my experience was as a sophomore, I had my two main influences artistically, on me. My mother and my cousin Pete. It's like, you went to all that schooling and those were your influences, your mom? Yeah, it was true. I mean, she was very encouraging and kind of allowed me to be an artist. You know, when you're a little kid, and your dad says, you know, I don't really like artists. There's something weird about artists. You can't read these comic books. And I'm like, what? He goes to work. I go to my mom and say, why can't I read these comic books? Oh, you can read them, I'll talk to Dad. And then my cousin Pete, some of you know him, he's different. He's eccentric, but he's an artist. He's a legit artist. And he said, when I was a sophomore in college, he said, come to Italy with me. We're going to go on a trip with a couple other cousins. So I usually give that trip credit for changing my opinion of what art was. And I even single out a couple paintings. This one's by Titian. If it was not so light, Chaplain Mo said you get the sun to go. You can see it. But it was a portrait by Titian, one of his friends. And I thought, oh, this painting is so interesting. I love the way he does this with paint. This is just paint. It's just stuff like toothpaste, colored toothpaste. And then there was another painting I saw that was by Rubens. And it was unfinished. It's a triumphal entry of Henry IV into Paris. And I thought, now this is what I'm talking about. A giant painting of figures and things. That's, to me, that was more serious than I said, okay, I don't want to be a comic book artist. I want to be a painter in the European tradition. But I wanted also to be in places that revered art. They revered the traditions of art. I couldn't find that in where I was. I couldn't, sometimes it's hard to find it in Mankato, but occasionally it works. But in 1974, I wasn't there. I wasn't here. So, what should my art be about? Realism, the figure, comic book imagery. This is one of my early paintings. This is from first semester. It was actually a photograph of my buddy Mark Grunwald, who was a comic book guy. And he and I we did a comic book for the newspaper called Augmento. Mark went on to work for Marvel Comics, and he wrote Captain America. He was one of the writers. So this is Mark Grunwald as Superman in a painting I did, first semester painting. And I really didn't know what I was trying to do. Wow. I do like the hair. I miss the hair. If I could, if it wasn't all stringy and gray, that'd be good. But I studied old European Old Masters, but it didn't guarantee that I could be a European Old Master. And so this is my first plein air painting. And plein air is a French term for painting outside. You're on location. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. I saw these Monet shows in Chicago, and I thought, that's cool. So it's a terrible, terrible painting. I actually still kept it. One thing that there's a couple things about all artists, I think. I've always said artists are kind of like, there's something slightly off with artists, generally. And think of the artists you know. And think about that. They were compelled to do something, to put themselves out there that normal people don't want to do, Think of like a guy like Robin Williams is in performance, the same thing. A normal person doesn't do it. And maybe a normal person doesn't paint or dance or sculpt or act. But the people that do feel compelled, we have to do this. It isn't really a choice. So you kind of hope it turns out, and then you look at it and go, oh, that's the worst painting I've ever seen. It's terrible. So the other part of me is I think I was a little delusional. Because I always thought I could do everything. I never thought I couldn't do it. Like in your high school, you're playing football. Oh yeah, I could play in the NFL if I wanted to. Yeah, that would be easy. No problem. I just don't want to. I think I'm going to be a painter. I'm going to be an artist. So I feel that way about filmmaking right now too. That's the one thing that could distract me. It's like, oh, I guess I'd like to make a feature film. Why not? We could. I got the cast right here. Who doesn't want to be a movie star? Anyway, back in the when I was at Holy Cross in graduate school, these shows came around. It was like the 100th anniversary of Impressionism, 100th anniversary of Monet, 100th anniversary of early Impressionism. So I thought, well, that looks like fun. I think I'll try it. So I went to Olbrich Park and did a painting of a garden. The Chicago Art Institute was where we would like to go all the time. In Oshkosh, we'd go there. And at Madison, we would always go to the Chicago Art Institute. They have a great Impressionist collection, so that was it. So that became my aesthetic. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to share, I'm going to use my own experience, but this is the key. I'm going to work from life and only from life. And I did, I'm only going to work from life. It's crazy in retrospect, isn't it? You're only going to work from life. That means you have to experience it right now, here and now. You can't dream it. You can't invent it. You can't do it. That's it. You got to work from life. And I thought, 30 years later, I thought, why did I do that? It took me 30 years to say, no, I don't have to do this anymore. I can do whatever I want. You can't stop me. But my influence was Paul Cezanne, who had the same approach, and yet he accomplished so much with it. I mean, he was doing all these cool paintings that influenced all these other movements, and all he did was look at things. And I thought, oh, I can do that. But it was it's kind of a crazy philosophy in the modern world. And then I thought, well, I'd like to do a masterpiece. That's my goal. I want to paint a masterpiece. Here it is, silverware on a tabletop. So yeah, I know, I failed. Just because I want it to be a masterpiece doesn't mean it's going to be one. But I really did try. Actually, these paintings in Madison were popular with the professors. They liked them because they were fairly abstract, and yet they were still realistic. So the abstract guys liked them okay, and the realistic guys liked them okay. There was definitely two different camps at the graduate school, and the students didn't even talk to each other. If you're in one camp, you didn't even talk to the other camp. The professors barely talked to each other. But these kind of satisfied both camps. So I got the feedback. But once you leave that cocoon of graduate school where we have about this many artists who are all chomping at the bit just to be an artist. So it's high energy and it's cool and it's nerve-wracking. And then you're in Greenville, Pennsylvania. It's like, what? And you're at a little Christian college and they're not that intense. There were critiques that went poorly in those days because they wanted to play baseball instead of paint. Of course. But anyway, every painting, and changes in life experiences. Here I had to move, like Sherry and I moved to Greenville, Pennsylvania. We're from Wisconsin. We're both from the same hometown. We're Wisconsinites. I won't even say cheeseheads, but we're Wisconsinites. We moved to Pennsylvania, we came and understand their accent. They sound like they're from another country. And I worked with a couple of great guys, and they taught me a lot, but I made a ton of mistakes, and those kind of things throw off your art, let's just say. Every painting isn't a home run, and I believe that I don't like to work until 2 in the morning and then flop over and say, oh, I achieved it. No, I like to work at 10, Have the cappuccino, sit around, think about things, and then paint. Doesn't that sound better? So as a teacher who's painting, my art could be pure. I know that's a dangerous one. And it could also have no real value and no purpose. Yeah, I did because I have Christian values and I'm trying to share those, but you know what I'm saying. It wasn't market driven. I wasn't trying to promote ideas. I wasn't selling a product. I'm doing paintings and I'm, 20, 25, 26, 27. I'm going into my 30s. I've always been successful getting in galleries and doing shows. But as I say in the bottom line here, sometimes you sell a painting, you don't even get paid. Once I went to check on the gallery and it was gone. The gallery was gone. It's like, wait, where did these people go? Someone in the building told me, I eventually found them, but. So just to get in the galleries didn't mean as much as you'd like it to mean. Like, oh, I'm rich and famous. One example, C.G. Ryan, I went to a meeting of C.G. Ryan and they sent my paintings to all over the country. 6 months later, they said, we only sold one, so we're shipping them all back. Thank you very much. You're out. And so that was, that's part of the harsh reality of it. And my work became kind of weather-based, so in the cold winter I did still life, and in the warm spring and summer I did landscape. And the paintings were kind of formal, and they're kind of, I liked them, I still like them, but I think I'm the only one in the room. I own them all still. Nobody bought them, no, if anyone likes them, I'll give you a good deal. If you say you like them, then, bring your debit card. In the 80s, and I got a commission, Warren Granke, Gary Flaty came up to me and said, we want an altarpiece at Grace Lutheran in Madison. And I said, great, can I do a normal, traditional one? They said, no, this is Means of Grace, we want it modern. We want pieces of it. So the Means of Grace, baptism, the Word representing Christ, and I thought, okay, cool, I'll do that, I can do that. And so that happened, and I was happy. And the idea of being a Christian artist, you know, one of the students told me that her dad was at our show last year, and he said, why didn't we have more Christian art? And I said, what are you talking about? It's all Christian art. We're all Christian artists. We don't all do pictures of Jesus, but then every song we sing isn't about Jesus either, and every book we write or read isn't about Jesus. But the praise of our gifts. So I did this painting, and this is an old story that I've told. Some of you probably heard it. I did a big painting, and Teal College, they invited me to come back and show, and the president said, I want to buy one of your paintings from my office. I said, great. The only trouble is the painting was promised for another show in Pennsylvania. It was part of a traveling show. And it's nearly this size. It was big. You know, you have to put it in your station wagon and drive around with your painting. And it was all done on location, all done from life. And someone stole it out of the show at a little college in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's at least as big as one of all the people in the yard here. And he had already paid me. He paid me. It's like, oh, that's too bad you lost your painting. He said, yeah, it is too bad, but you know what? He said, insurance paid the claims, so I want to buy another one. So he bought this one. And it was the same size and a similar theme. It was, you know, Wisconsin landscape done at the Bukowski Cottage. So I was happy about it, but still, you think, where is that painting today? Is this, you know, is it in like one of those James Bond villain chambers? Oh, I'm enjoying I have a Vermeer that I stole from Boston, and then I have this Bukowski painting that I stole from Allegheny College in Western Pennsylvania. That's what I like to think, anyway. It's some diabolical art thief that has the Vermeer right next to it. Anyway, these kind of genre scenes are fairly natural. I tend to like to work, and I would work all the time. But teaching at Bethany was tough, especially in the beginning, because I was a one-man department. It was junior college. And if you think about the staff back in 1980, it was a grim bunch. It was like, you're kidding me. Grim is a good word for it. And they were nice people. I mean, they're great church people, but grim. I painted these paintings. I do paintings like this, and they're like, ugh. I want to put them up in, you know, where people come into the school, and they're like, I don't know. Luckily, I was in the group when they first started sabbaticals. And so I was able to take a sabbatical to re-energize. And so I was able to take it, actually 4 sabbaticals, which have all been good. And this is one with my cousin Pete. I tell this story quite a few times too. We landed in Cairo, and he's a Zorro fanatic, and he wanted to dress like Zorro and get his picture taken on a camel. And this guide led us to this kind of slum in Giza. And I'm thinking, this is my last day. This is it. And then he puts on the Zorro mask, and all the kids run up and say, Batman, Batman. And you can see my face, it's just like, oh, brother, I can't take this. But I did design some amazing trips, and my cousin Pete traveled with me on the first 2 sabbaticals. So this one I did strictly because I like the Beatles and those old press photos. The Beatles wave as they get on the plane to go off to the next concert. So that was strictly a Beatle reference here. We took a plane to Crete, you know to see some old rocks. But traveling, as many of you know me, traveling is always a priority. I need to see the works firsthand, and I want to see the works firsthand. And it is like a blood transfusion of artistic blood. Or to go to a culture that reveres art, like New York City. I like to go to New York City. I need to go to New York City occasionally because they appreciate art. Now, some people said, why don't you just move there then? You know, they don't have an ingredient that is important to me, though. They don't have the church. These places that I love don't have the church that I go to. So how can I stay there? I can go and visit, I can get artistically recharged, but I come back because of, you know, who I am and where I am and that. So that's why I don't move there. But anyway, Sherry has been my companion on many of these trips also, and I laughed in my earlier days that she had seen more art than any art professor I've ever had, just because I was bringing her along. But anyway, I would get a lot of ideas from that, and here's one where I wanted to put my kids in a painting, and I thought, what kind of painting could I do? And I saw this by Gauguin at the Orsay. It was 3 Tahitian boys. And I thought, oh, I know why Gauguin painted this now, so I can steal it for my own. But I like the idea because they're saying grace, and their artwork is here, and I feel it with kind of symbolic things. There's the Resurrection of Christ by Piero della Francesca is in the background. And I had seen it on a recent trip. So I like to add those kind of things to it. So the messy kitchen, this is what I like. Dolores Fisher, some of you might know, would always comment. She would critique my paintings. And messy kitchen was usually the 2 words she included. The Synod also commissioned me to do some work. I did paintings for the Synod convention every year for 25 years. They like to put a big painting up that had the theme. And they also commissioned me to do 9 paintings about the history of the ELS and for an anniversary. They're still in the seminary and they're still around campus, you might have noticed. The 1994, the chapel commission was kind of a miracle for me because I just thought, how would I ever get a commission like this? But the committee said, hey, do you think you could do, first they said, do you think you could do a Lucas Cranach painting? Grunwald, the crucifix. I said, I could, but I really don't want to. I'd rather do one of my own. So they said, oh, okay. So it was dedicated in '96, and the reason why I say model and all, because many of you know that story with a model. Literally, a man that looked like Jesus came to one of our art shows. And it was like, Jesus is in the house. So I approached him and said, would you mind posing? And he said, sure, I'll pose. So I had maintenance build a cross, and we did it all. He came back a couple of years ago. He's like 50 now. He said, none of my family have ever seen this picture. Can I get pictures of this? He doesn't look like Jesus anymore. He looks like a 50-year-old guy. And I say that, that's rough, I've gone beyond that though, so okay. Anyway, the chapel, I did the chapel, and there was some criticism of it at first, especially because it seemed too Catholic. And people were very suspicious of this. I was Catholic too, formerly Catholic. I was confirmed my senior year in college in the Wisconsin Synod. So I was Catholic, and I think some people were suspicious of that. All of a sudden we have this artwork in the chapel, but they all got over it. Although it was critiqued this summer again. Someone said, whoever painted this is in a satanic homosexual cult. Check on them. So these guys from the Synod showed up at our door. Seriously, no, really. It's not, the Synod guys didn't come to my door, but there was someone that came to Synod convention that accused the painter of that of being a devilish homosexual. Thank you very much. Anyway, it was a great challenge. I was very excited. Some of you also know Michael Helen. We say he was the baby Jesus. Joanne, Sherry's sister, happened to have a couple babies, so I needed a model. With Mary, it was awkward because the Mankato Ballet used to use our space, and I saw this young ballerina. I thought, boy, she looks perfect. But it seems creepy when an old guy comes in and says, oh, you can't pose. How'd you like to pose for me? She never did say much. She posed, and Sarah Bladel posed for my Martha figure too. She was just a touch short, so I had to put her up on I had to raise her up. And this was a Westfall. It was fun to do that though. It was super fun. It was on Belgian linen with great oils, and it was a great project for me. after those sabbaticals, like in this case, I went to Cairo, Athens, Jerusalem, Rome, Florence, and Madrid all in one trip. My head was literally spinning like, what am I going to do now? I've seen everything and I can't even think straight. So I came back in the summer and went to the Bukowski Cottage and did this painting, and I enjoyed that. And I think it's like an important painting for me. Keep going. I also continued working in still life all the time, and I wanted to do a red series that's limited to Roman fresco colors and Italian Baroque colors, so the palette. And again, I did a series of these, and I showed them at Bethany, and I really loved them. But the intense red was too much for a lot of people. Luckily not for the presses, but a lot of other people. I lent one to my mom, and she said, take it out of here. Take it. I can't be in the room with this paint. It's too red. Oh, thanks, Mom. Gotta go. And I did reach a point with the still life where I'm going, what am I doing? Why should I keep doing this? Is this it? I mean, it was really complicated. It's called the artist's table. And it's a bunch of stuff. And it's all painted pretty realistically. It's a little smaller than this. But it took so much concentration, so much effort, it didn't seem right. It didn't seem fun. So I stopped, actually, after a while, doing the still lifes. Marv Meyer was on one of my Italy trips, and I said, we were in the Sistine Chapel. I said, Marv, wouldn't it be nice if we had a fresco? He said, yeah, that would be nice. We're putting up a new building called Meyer Hall. So in the old days, we had a larger faculty development fund, and I was able to find a class. I'm going to study fresco, right? Where would I go to study fresco? Let's go to Rome. Let's go to a village outside of Rome, instead of going like to the local community center. And I met Jimmy Chagru, and we were in a dungeon. It was a lot like a reality TV show. It was really like that. I mean, people being mean to each other and snubbing each other and trying to outdo each other. And it was weird because we're all in our 40s. But Jimmy Chagru was awesome. And he was telling me if we do bad work, they're going to chip it off the wall. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do a portrait of the lady that owns the space. So this is what the lady looked like. I said, hey, would you mind posing for a fresco? So I took some pictures. They had them developed for me. She was different. She was like all artists, very different. But I did this painting, and I did it almost in a post-impressionist style, not like traditional fresco. We actually took a group from Bethany to see the fresco one year on the Italy trip, which was cool. It was fun to see it. It was still there at the time. It was the most challenging because when I got the commission from the Board of Regents, I had no idea how to do fresco. They said, can you do a fresco? I said, yes, of course. Oh, fresco, nothing to it. And then I went to the fresco class outside of Rome, and it was so hard, I thought, I can't do this. I can't do it. So then I went up to Jimmy and I said, hey, Jim, if I ever got a commission, do you think you could ever come to Mankato and maybe work on the wall for me? You think, possibly? And he said, if you get a fresco commission, I'll come. So it was a little devious of me, very devious, because I had the commission. So I called him up, I said, Jim, you promised now. He literally came to Bethany then and worked with the architects, and they designed the wall. It's a hollow wall. The fresco is hollow wall. There's a bit of air behind it, and like a rubber seal. And it was 5,000 pounds of lime and sand that we troweled onto that space, and then I got to paint it. I didn't trowel it, he did. He and Jeff and a couple other guys. Took 4 years to prepare for it. That's partly because the building wasn't out. The building wasn't there yet. But partly because it's so hard. And my son made a documentary of it, and I have the artifact here. That's VHS, the Creation Fresco Video. It should be in the archives. Actually, if this was Oprah or something, I'd have copies for everyone. But we used to send these out with admissions. They would give these to local high schools. And then they'd say, oh, you want to come to Bethany? Look at this guy does fresco. One of my favorite parts about the fresco, though, besides just like the documentary of how to do it and all this, is in the end, we did a stunt where they asked me, what are you going to do now that you painted a fresco? I said, I'm going to Disneyland. Of course, you know, like Joe Montana. So then we went to Disneyland, and I brought a picture of the fresco and showed Mickey. And I invited him to come to Bethany. We have it all on video. It's so cool. It's in the special features on the DVD. And I am not joking.
Did he come?
He hasn't been here yet. If he took the costume out, he could be here tonight. Anyway, this is a picture Dave Norris took, and painting the fresco was super hard because you can't make any mistakes. And they had a camera on me like 24 hours. Anytime the fresco was going, they were sending pictures to the internet, and then I was on a lift, which I have kind of a fear of heights. And so the lift would kind of move, you know, it's like you're painting like this. You know, okay, kind of wait. And you can't make any mistakes, and Jimmy would come up and he'd look at it and go, oh, we've got to start this over. He would scrape it all off, he would trim it really harsh. But the fresco was great and super fun, and we did have a lot of help. People like Rudy Hunzi and Mark Arstead, and even in the video, you know, some of the documentary clips are really fun. Hopefully someday we'll have that available, but it's too complicated to tell you about it. It's just, it was. We would work about 14 hours a day. We worked 20 days, and then collapsed, and then it was done. And that's it. That's the end of the story. Jimmy was here with a small crew for a month before. He lived in the dorm, and that was not good. He lived in the dorm. You know, he's used to working on crews in Fresco and LA and Texas, and he needs his sleep. And he's in the dorm the last week of school. And I just thought, oh, good luck. Good luck with sleep. Anyway, at the same time, you know, when I finished the fresco, I was numb and just sat there. But it was a great artistic experience. I'm still in contact with the teacher, Jack Portland, and Jim. And around that time, I needed to start another series of painting. I needed to do a painting. So without really knowing what I was going to do, I jumped in the car from Bethany and drove to Sibley Park, stopped in front of the garden. And I thought, hey, this is cool. I've never seen it before. I think I'll paint here. 2004 when I started. But these are from 2005, and I did these paintings in the midst of my dad was dying. So it was really hard because we didn't know he was going to die when he did. He died kind of quickly, and he was sick, and I was doing these garden paintings, and I never thought about it, but later I started thinking about how these paintings became kind of symbolic of like the search for paradise or the yearning for paradise. And thinking them in the context of my dad dying, they made a lot more sense that way, because does a garden really need to be interpreted by an artist? I mean, that's a legitimate question. But I did these paintings, and I moved like 1 foot over, and then I'd paint. Then I'd go to Green Bay and see my dad, come back, move over a foot, and do another painting. And then in September, he died. So I had done these paintings in August, in between going to Green Bay. So I look back at them wistfully, and I really like them. But it was done at a time that was kind of sad for me. Pastone, though, I did a show in St. Peter, and Pastone Living said, hey, we want to give you an opportunity to do a big painting for us, and we'll actually pay you. And I said, okay, I'm in. And it was an 18-foot painting. And one thing I will say about Bethany, they've always been really supportive, and they've allowed me to use the facilities for painting. The fresco was done in the drawing room. The altarpiece was done in the drawing and painting room. Pastone Living painting was done in the drawing room. Students could see it while I was working on it. I mean, it was there. They could look at it. Hopefully, I mean, luckily they didn't vandalize it. Maybe someday they'll come and say, I think this was part of the painting. When you were gone. Because I literally had this in the studio for a year. It's an 18-foot painting. The Weekman family helped me because they have a semi. I mean, they have like a big big truck. I needed to get it there. This one piece, this one giant canvas. So we put it in the back of their semi, and I said, okay, I'm going in with it because I don't want anything to happen. So I'm in the dark with an 18-foot landscape, you know? And we have to go down the hill to get to where we're going. We made it though, and it turned out it was fine. But if you ever go to Pastone, it used to be called the Lutheran home. It's a transitional home, or sometimes called the old folks home, nursing home. But as you walk in the lobby, it's right there. It was really nice. A great commission for me. And all of a sudden, I seemed to be getting more at the time. Gustavus asked me to do a painting for them, a panel, and I had just gotten back from Istanbul. Jeff and I said, hey Jeff, you want to go on spring break? Let's go to Istanbul. I said, okay Dad, when do you want to leave? So we just got back from Istanbul, and then Gustavus said, hey, you want to do a painting for our chapel? And so I did one based on the Istanbul kind of aesthetic. Gold leaf, Christ figures, angels, and it ended up in this book. There's a picture of it. There's a little article about it. Linnea Wren, the art historian, Gustavus is one of the collaborators in the book. It was called Community of Believers. Dutler Bowl wanted a painting, but I said, you know what? You can't afford me. Isn't that arrogant? You can't afford me. I'm too big time. But I have a couple students that are pretty good, and they'll do it. So I said, how about I design it and I'll supervise, and I'll let these painters go for it. So Dutler Bowl has like an 80-foot side of the building. And this is what I did for it. I took a brush and put it on a 3-foot stick and just drew like Matisse in his old age. And just thought, this is it. And then I got two of my best painters at the time, Malia Krohn and Laura Lemus, and they did the painting. They got hired by Dutler Bowl, and I think Malia ended up marrying the guy she met there. So there's more to the story. She's here, she might disprove it, but they did a fantastic job. They actually tried to copy my style on a giant wall outside. It's an outside mural at Dutler Bowl. If you ever happen to drive by on 169, it's it's kind of a bowler's pilgrimage site. A former pastor in the synod also asked me to do one called Reformation, altarpiece for Reformation Lutheran in Portland, Oregon. These kind of projects sometimes take 4 or 5 years. They're contacting you, they're asking you for ideas, they're telling you what to do. So they don't all happen at once, and sometimes they do, and then you ship them. I did go out there for the dedication, but they had it all. Then in 2010, in the meantime, I've been doing other paintings, like the show here. 2010, I answered an email call from Minnesota artists for an arts and healing program. They wanted artists from Minnesota to do work that would help children who are sick and their parents who are waiting for them. And so I got chosen to be an artist, and this is one of my favorite paintings for the Minnesota Children's Hospital. It's my daughter Julia and our dog Goldie. But I really liked it, and I thought, well, that would be kind of a fun image to see if you were, at the hospital. Anyway, I was commissioned to do quite a few of these. These are my niece's children. I actually set it up like a movie. I had the kids pose. I went to a location, shot all the location shots, had the kids pose in another location, and put it together in a narrative. So I had these kids, and then I had Andy Overn allowed me to use his children too, and has never asked me for any royalties, so I'm happy about that. But they were in the narrative, and these paintings are all up in Minneapolis. I also got Emily Alberts, now Emily Milner, to pose, because I thought she looks like a kid. I need models that look like kids. She could pose. But I used that same Bukowski Cottage in the background. She was never there. She posed in the studio. But that's one in that collection. Then second floor surgery in Minneapolis, there's 14 paintings in these spaces in surgery. So the trouble is they don't really like people just to wander in unless you're there for family. But it is pretty cool because it's like having a one-man show at the Minneapolis Children's Hospital. So hopefully you'll never see them when your parents or relatives. And then the St. Paul Children's, this was a group out of San Diego, and they said, we want you to do more. Give us an idea for a mural. And I said, oh, great, okay. But you can't use toxic chemicals, so no oil. You can't do it on location because it's a hospital. Come on, give me a break. There's people sick. Figure it out and get it done by August. And I was like, oh, okay. It has to be an acrylic then, doesn't it? Yes. It has to be, it's going to be wallpapered on the wall. So I did it on theatrical muslin, primed, and in acrylic. And I hired a wallpaper person to wallpaper it in place. So it's literally, I painted it here at Bethany and wallpapered it on. And it was under extreme conditions. At the time, my mother-in-law had a stroke, and she was dying. And I was slated to go to Italy on the 4th sabbatical. So I had 23 days to finish this painting and get it installed in the midst of all this stuff. And so the theme was I went to the park. The Como is Como, isn't it? Como Park Conservatory, the European Garden. My son came with me, my wife came along, and then we ran into a Mount Olive church member who happened to be there with her grandchildren, Ellen Mueller. And then I added some more of my nieces and nephews' kids, because I wanted actually people I knew. I thought it would be more fun. So it was done under that kind of stress, but it still had some nice passages of paint. And it was done in acrylic. I'd never painted in acrylic before. But I thought as a painter I should know paint, shouldn't I? I was really a terrible person in my youth because I hated acrylic. And I used like to scourge like St. Paul before he became a Christian. I hated acrylic and I didn't want anyone to use it and didn't let my students use it. So now I get to paint in acrylic, and I don't mind them. They still are, I don't like them yet, but I can do it. A couple of acrylics are in the show up there on paper. So this was an acrylic. Oh, and then one of my travelers, or a couple of my travelers wanted a painting to commemorate their trip, and so I did this for Kevin and Judy from the photos from the trip. I asked other staff if they had images I could use. I did something different to the sky, but this is Van Shu and a couple of his kids. This is in St. Paul. And so you can see a lot of my work recently has been figurative. This is Sherry with baby Jeff, that's in St. Paul. I just thought I gotta look at my own pictures. I'll just do ones that I like. And so I had a theme with these kind of stick figures running through it. I did a series of these for St. Paul Children's. And then Mark Knudsen, my nephew, commissioned me to do this painting for St. Mark's in Eau Claire, a personal tragedy. And so the kids were all cousins. And it's Jesus with the children. And it's a fairly large painting. It's like a 6x4. But it's in Eau Claire. And the last series for St. Paul Children's were 8 paintings in acrylic about dance. And so I thought, okay, I might as well put Jenna in here too. So I was all about my family members. This was the last work I did for the Arts and Healing program. It was a 30-foot mural for Abbott Northwestern in the Mother-Child Birthing Center. It was under extreme deadlines. I mean, it was brutal because I still teach full-time. And I'm still like a citizen. You know, I'm a deacon at the church. I still have responsibilities. And they were like, okay, get that done by December 20th. And some of you remember it because it was set up I had set up over by Eric in the Dwight Hall. And then brought it back for the final touches. But it's full of references to my own family and the different kids. It's the Getsky Lake, extended 30 feet long. But it was a very challenging and very fun project. It's just that I didn't have enough time. Like you don't have enough time, students. Have you ever heard that before? I didn't have enough time. They liked it though, so I was happy. Sometimes we are stuck with that, or the time runs out. Recently, then last year, the Traffic Box Commission, it was ironic that it was reported on TV, radio, and newspaper. I was embarrassed about it. It was so popular. But it's by Hub 500. and there's a big construction site now, right, leaning into it, so it's like, get this stuff out of here. You're messing with my traffic box. I think it's totally stupid. But, you know, it's for the city of Mankato, and we're gonna beautify the city, we're looking for artists, and I'm thinking, I can help you out, you know, I can do this. But in reality, are you kidding me? A traffic box, stainless steel, in acrylic? Give me a break. I'm not into it, but I did it, like I said. Then they're showing it on TV and stuff, and this was the offshoot of the Children's Hospital. A woman out of the Blue contacted me and said, I want a painting. My son is sick, we saw your paintings, we like them so much, and it was gratifying because I did this painting for her, and her son has a host of health issues. And when my son gave it to her, she broke down, which is, you know, I mean, it's sad that he's ill, but it's still, as a painter, it's like, that's kind of cool. That's just a kid. It's a portrait of a kid. And then Jenna said, oh, Dad, can you do this favor for a friend of mine, a former Bethany student? Her dad wants a mural in his kitchen, dining room. He's a John Deere man. Did you know that there's John Deere and then there's something else? Some people like green and some people like red, and they're very, you know, it's something. You have to have the right color tractor. So I do a little John Deere research, but it's actually cool because, I mean, I always accept these jobs because it's a challenge and because they'll pay me and because I like to paint. Crazy as it seems. And so this horizon line matches the real horizon line when you look out these double doors. And it's right outside of Mapleton. So you look out, it's like, wow, this continues right into, and this is his dad. It was her dad, so this is two generations. He's on an old combine, which I don't know anything about. You know, I submitted drawings and I'm like, that's ridiculous. What? I fixed it, they liked it. There's some pheasants. I said, you know, you can put a chair behind in front of this, and then when you have grandchildren, they can hunt for the pheasants. So they bought it. They bought that idea. And then I was going to be a grandpa myself, so I thought I had to do another mural. So I did one at Depeer for my own granddaughter, and Beatrix Potter became the subject. It's a fairly large mural. It's actually 9 feet or something. I mean, it was significant size. So, I mean, it just shows you that an artist needs to be versatile. You want to try to be able to do anything, or you're just delusional and think you can do everything, like I am. And so that brings us to where we are today. The State Fair entry, the landscapes, and back to the idea of landscape as poetry. And so at this time, if someone could put the lights back on here, and then if we could entertain questions. It's by the janitor's closet. This is the building where all light switches make sense. Yes, Andy.
You begin with the idea of artist poetry, visual poetry, but then you're working on a tight deadline to do a project that's not completely your own. What are your thoughts when it's late at night and you're tired and you don't want to do that? Do you still think poetry, or do you have other thoughts?
I know it's not the same kind of poetry, and I think about that little engine that was going up the hill. No, when I accept a project like that I know is a commission, that I know I don't control, I just want to be professional about it and finish it in due time. Sometimes it is extremely hard to do, get it done.
Do you get the same satisfaction from it when it's finished, or is it a different kind of satisfaction?
I think it's different. I mean, one of the satisfactions is you get paid. And I know that sounds terrible, but to get paid for it, any art, is kind of like, oh, that felt good. You know, it feels good. So the old masters, you know, what about the old master aesthetic and all this stuff about the hierarchy of art? And I think what you have to do is make the best art you can, given the opportunities that you get. if I, I really did think, now that I did a painting at Bethany, an altarpiece, that I would be doing altarpieces for the rest of my life. But, if everyone here commissioned me to do like an altarpiece, I would be doing them for the rest of my life. So it just depends on what kind of opportunities come your way, and if you'll accept the opportunity. And when you think, okay, what's your advice? Let's invent a few questions here. What's your advice for younger artists?
What's your advice for younger artists?
Work hard and be as versatile as possible. Don't be afraid of the computer, and don't be afraid to work. And take satisfaction in the process. One of the things about art to me, it is literally, it's fun for me to paint. I enjoy that process. Even if it doesn't turn out, even if it isn't as good as I thought it was going to be, or it was going to be, I still enjoy the process. And I think that's a real reward. If they like it too, and you get paid, it's like 4th of July, It's like, other questions? Yes.
You see a lot of imagery nowadays because of all of our devices. How important do you think it is to see a painting in real life?
To see a painting in real life?
Yeah.
I think to see it in real life is extremely important. I think it's critical to really understanding it. But I think you can look at pictures of paintings and be inspired. And you can gain a lot from looking at pictures. But personally, my comparison would be, if you listen to an opera, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, that's an opera. But if you go to the opera, it's like, wow, look at this. There's costumes and action and characters, and there's more to it. You see more by going to see it in person. I thought you were going to ask, what about using photographs in your work now? For 30 years you did it the other way. How could you dare? How dare you break your own philosophy? It's really hard to be a purist, isn't it? It's like, who cares? Who really cares? Can I see a show of hands? Who cares if I look at photos or if I just... There's only one. The only A student that came. There is something to that, though, because you're hoping that what you do kind of lives beyond you. You're hoping that someone will treasure it besides your own kids or besides your family. Or in my case, my mom didn't even like it, I'll just take it away. So when you can reach other people with your art, that's particularly gratifying. If depending on how you did it. For example, the Cottage series first started, everything was done completely from life. But then I started the second series, Sibley Park, and I turned 50, and I said, it doesn't matter anymore. I want to do garden paintings all the time. I want to do them all winter. So I took 1,000 pictures or more, and I can work, and I know how I see. I look at the picture, I know how I see, so I interpret it the way I see it, if I was standing there or if I'm... Now the difference is, you compress time. Like if I'm working from life, let's say I'm working on this painting here with the man reading the journal or writing. I work on it for about 2.5 hours. The light changes. I pick the light that I like as it's changing. So it's literally 2 hours compressed into one split second. So if you're going to work from photographs, you should take like 5 or 6 photographs at different times, and then pick through those photographs and include it all, because that's really the experience of plein air painting. One of the most artificial paintings in the show is the one of the family at the lake. They were never all there together. The whole foreground is from an earlier era, when my mother-in-law was still alive and the dog was still alive. And the group was never together. So I started to look at the old masters and see how artificial it was to create the art. It just matters how you appreciate it and how you enjoy making it. That process to me doesn't matter as much anymore. And like I said, one guy cares. So. Yes?
I got to see this painting at the State Fair this last weekend. It was really fun to see it Down the way though, then I saw I saw a piece of art by somebody else, and I just thought to myself, that's a really neat painting, I like it. And then I looked at the tag and it said it wasn't a painting at all, it was a photograph. But it was done in such a way that it was hard to tell. And so my question to you is, where's art going, and what does that mean to you? I mean, we're nowadays, it's almost like you can mimic painting with the computer, or with photos and things like this. Does this, do you think, appreciate or diminish actual painting? Is there something about the actual time and work that is involved that matters? Can you respond to that kind of stuff that might be on the wall next to yours?
I hate everything on the wall that's next to mine that isn't mine. But, answering your question, it is a troubling time. I mean, one of the things I absolutely hate, I post a picture on Facebook and somebody says, that looks just like a photograph. It's like, it's a total insult to me, a total insult. Because a painting has a different quality than a photograph. It has a different tactile quality. It has a different expression than a photograph. And if I come to the point where it looks too photographic, it still reads differently as a painting. Yeah, there's some really, really cool photographs these days, and they can do tricky things with the computer. But I don't think in real life appreciation, it's the same. It's not the same. Someone that appreciates painting will not appreciate the thing you saw as much as they appreciate the painting. What becomes hard for me is I do these paintings and I think they're reasonably good. And people look at them like, oh, cottage paintings, lakes. It seems like a cliche. It's old hat. Or they don't think it's modern enough. It doesn't look like modern art. This doesn't look like Andy Warhol or whoever they think is modern. So what the bottom line on it is they aren't really looking at it to see what is there. What is there, you know? If it's this poem of landscape, of this feeling I have, or this experience that I want to share, they're not seeing it, you know? And so that's kind of annoying. And that's why I implore everyone to work on it, because to appreciate art, I mean, it takes years. It takes years of looking. The same thing with theater or music or anything. I mean, it's a discipline. You study how to appreciate it. Yes?
Are you ever creatively satisfied?
There are certain days when I feel like, yes, this is great, but I don't feel ever finished with work, like, oh, I've done enough paintings now, I'm done, if that's what you mean. There are certain paintings that I look around the room, for instance. One of my favorite paintings is the one with the girl sitting on the steps, the Cottage painting, in the back corner there. I love that painting because it has a sort of an abstract composition, all the pieces seem to work, and then yet it has this feeling. The girl is looking at the bird, it's called Bird Bath, and the girl is sitting on a step looking at it, sort of lost in thought. And when I look at it, I see the history of the place as it's changed. Not only the light as it falls on this cottage setting, but the woman who's experiencing the loss of the past. So it's like, what? Not everyone sees that, but that's what I see when I look at it. And I'm happy with that painting. I like it a lot. I think that one works for me quite a bit. I like that. But I feel that way about a lot, yes.
You say that you paint what you see and how you see it. Have you ever felt limited by painting things that you can look at in the physical world, opposed to maybe
It's a tricky question, because I think you're leading towards maybe more imaginative things or more conceptual things, and I think it has to do with kind of who I am. It's too old, I'm old. I've always been kind of stubborn too. Even as a student, I was very stubborn. And do I think it's limited? Well, that's not what I do. I just don't do that. I've been kind of entrenched in this visible world, and I enjoy that, and I sort of get what I want to do with it. So if I start doing like dream sequences and nightmares, You know, I did a noir series that some of you have seen on my website, and at a certain point I just had to stop because it wasn't quite feeling right. It looked kind of interesting. I mean, there was some gangsters, and my family were all like killers, murderers, gangsters, you know, but it wasn't, couldn't finish it, yes.
How long can a person hold a pose, especially thinking of your 3 children?
Jeff was the only one who could actually pose. The girls were terrible. And that was when I really felt like, okay, this is from life. You sit still. But I ended up taking pictures of the girls. And Jeff, he had his head down, so he didn't have to worry about it. Yes?
I want to go back to Mandy's question. What about comic books? You gotta have some desire.
You know, I love the comics, and when I taught art for 22 years. I have a great fondness for comics, but again, that's a whole artistic discipline. And I enjoy the movies. I love, you know, Spider-Man. The second Spider-Man I thought was like the best. And the new Captain America, awesome. I really enjoyed those like a kid. But artistically, the comics just don't do it for me. A lot of the comic artists are very good at what they do, but I don't respond to the art like I used to. Don't see it. Yes.
My favorite Bill story is one that you're not even in. I ran into a student who had been in your class, I think, 20 years earlier. And I asked, to make conversation, are you still painting? Do you like to paint? Because they were a good painter. And he said, oh, no, but don't tell Bill. And I think the thing that makes you so effective is you generate that response in people. They almost feel guilty for not painting. And so the question for me is, you have this persona of the inexhaustible supply of art, and I'm wondering if you ever experience a time where you have that fleeting feeling that wait a second, all I'm doing here is pushing around colored toothpaste. Did you ever get that, or is that something you're just totally immune to that sort of thing?
I haven't felt it yet, and I've always been I've been kind of a fast painter throughout my life, and I gain a lot from painting, a lot of energy. I used to say that if I was feeling ill, I would just go paint. I was fine. Or if students say they're sick, it's like, well, get in the studio, you won't be sick anymore. You know, feel much better. The only thing that's tempted me away from painting, and just in recent years, is film with Bethany's media stuff. Kurt Paulson and characters over in Lindsay. There's something about that is so creative and so engaging. And when I went to college, I was really interested in film. I kind of flipped a coin. I thought, okay, filmmaking or painting, filmmaking or painting. And so the coin landed on painting. But that's the one thing. If I do dream about that, but I saw a movie lately called The Artist and the Model. It was about an old artist, and he finds his model. He's doing these paintings and sculptures of her, and he starts talking about this invisible thing that he's after in his art. And it just kind of, I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, that's right. I got to not do the movies yet. I got to finish what I started with the painting. Yeah, I always seem to have a lot of momentum with the painting, and when the commissions come along, that kind of helps it too. Well, the only thing that stops me lately might be I'm real picky about the kind of paint I use when I run out of money. Spend money like a drunken sailor and need supplies. But no, I haven't felt that. Any other? Yes.
So what parts of your artist statement are being translated to movie direction?
Well, I think in movies, as in all the great art, you do what you know, and so I'd like to use the Bethany campus and do something about. Actually, I want to do something about Lutheranism in the world, and artistically, it doesn't have to be about painting, because I think the filmmaking process is very artistic, and I love the filmmakers who treat it that way. they talk about their films as if they're paintings. And so it's dedication, it is life, it is human experience. You know, I want to do something. I think a movie with two people talking can actually be pretty compelling. Any other? Yes.
You said earlier, one way to touch computers, and I'm wondering if you ever had a chance to work with a digital game or anything on your opinion about computer art.
Computers didn't exist when I first started, obviously, and I haven't really done much with computers. My only training came from Andy Burmeister and Andy Oburn, and it was more like, hey, how do I solve this problem, or it's stuck. So I haven't spent enough time with it. I'm not against, I think what they can do is awesome. I think it's really cool. It's just not what I do. I don't respond as well to the electronics of it, the digitizing. I really like paint. And so if you can paint with a computer that the way some of our students do, I'd say, hey, go for it. That is kind of the age we're in. But there's a certain satisfaction that I personally get from the color toothpaste. It's just like, I tell my students this is like, going on a roller coaster ride at amusement park, or you're jet skiing on the lake. This is what it's, you have the same feeling with this brush in your hand. Yes?
I noticed most of your paintings here are on linen. You want to say a little more, say something about why you've chosen to paint on linen?
Linen is just a better quality canvas, and it has a better archival quality. Canvas is one thing, but linen, original paintings of the European tradition in linen have lasted 500 years. And so linen is just another word for fancy canvas. I was gonna, oh yes, way in back.
Like the old masters, have you started eating your paint that you like so much?
I try not to eat, actually in my old age, I try not to actually come in contact with it too much, just because you absorb so much. And boy, I've been painting for 40 years, I believe. No, what I was going to say is, why are all the pictures sunny days? Don't you ever paint on a cloudy day? Where's winter? This is the land of the snow. Where's winter in your paintings? That's what I thought we were going to ask. But. Any other questions? Yes.
Where are the bluebirds? That's what I want to know. There's sunny birds and there's sunny days and bluebirds.
There's a bird in the back. In the newest Sibley Park painting, there's a bird. It's not a bluebird though. It has a little red head on it, sitting on a slab. I do like the bird paintings from the ancient history. I love the Romans. Yes. I wish I did. I don't. The trouble now is everything that was done in slides has to be reformatted. So there's whole periods of my life that aren't digitized. I don't know how many I've done. Yes.
When does the book come out?
The book? It would be fun to do a book, but again, it's so much work. I need someone like, someone really skilled in desktop publishing. Put that together. No, what really happens when you get old, your energy, you really have to guard your energy. Like, how much do I have left? How many paintings do I have left, and how much time do I have to do the paintings? So there are times when you refuse to do certain things that will take you away from it. That's where filmmaking is so seductive. Yeah, let's make some movies, that would be the coolest thing, next to painting. Any other questions? When I first started at Bethany, it was always like, oh, I could only just get one good student, that would make my year. Because we were pretty small back in the day, and being the only man in the department, you just needed one student, and that was what you often just got. One good student. But a couple other questions I have quick, and then I'll let you go. One of them I thought you might ask is, what's the worst thing about working at Bethany, and what's the best thing about working at Bethany? No, as I said, what's hard about working at Bethany is there are certain cultural limitations to the ELS Synod and to our constituents. And what you're trying to do is add to that culture. So it's a process that I've been at for 34 years. And it's hard. It's hard to affect the culture of a synod or through the students. And it's a hard thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just hard. The best thing about working at Bethany, besides there's always a Sunday school answer, right? Mission of the college, Christ Center. But it's really the students. Working at Bethany is awesome because we have such awesome students. And isn't it true? I mean, really, you're very unique. It's a very unique culture here. You're great, and it's always been satisfying. I've always loved to see friendships among students from Bethany grow over the years and develop. One of my favorites is Dave Norris and Brian Strom. I had them in class. I had these two guys in class, and now they've been lifelong friends. They both work here. Their family, they both have families, and their families are friends. And I think that is super cool. That's one of the unique things that I really enjoy every year, are the friendships and the unique qualities of the students. So that's the answer. Thanks for coming. I think there's a little reception. I'll be glad to talk personally. Everything's for sale.
Does that all the time. Oh, he would, wouldn't he? Yeah. See, that's what I would like to